Alright, so some guys have questions on catch cans for Mazdaspeed platform. So I basically ran into an issue where I had their Damond Motorsport Stage 1 type setup, I guess you want to call it, where it has this check valve right here that normally this goes right into your intake manifold, right on the back side. I have a cork sport manifold now, but normally there'll be a fitting on the back side. That's where that 90 comes off with a check valve. And then from your intake manifold, you'll go down to the can. Mine's kind of buried down in the hole. Anyways, we'll go from there to the can, and then from the can it'll go to the you can see it in there, little green PCV valve. So normally you'll have, this is your factory plate that's on the engine, and you'll have your OEM PCV valve right here. So that's like a stage 1 setup. Check valve off the intake manifold, goes to the can, from the can to the PCV valve, just to catch, you know, all the normal crap that you don't want going in your engine, to keep your valves cleaner than they would normally get. My problem was, I would say at 22, 23 psi, I had no issues with the system. I just had an auxiliary fuel, and we hit, I'm only on like I think my second revision, and it's hitting 26 psi at the moment. But after a long 4th gear watt log, one night I actually blew the dipstick popped out because I had too much crankcase pressure at the top of a 4th gear pull. It just couldn't vent enough pressure in the crankcase to keep up with the demand. So after talking with Jordan and Will and even Damond Motorsports, they kept telling me just get the plate. So Damond makes this plate, which I'm sure tons of you guys have seen. So there's a spot for your OEM valve, and there's a second port right there in the middle. In my case, I'm blocking that one off. And then in the third one is just another hole. So on my, where did I put it? It's easier to show you on the old plate because it doesn't have it. And there is some design features on the backside on the Damond plate that are a little better designed than the OEM anyways. So PCV valve, factory spot, and then they have 2 more ports right here. So I have the middle one blocked off, and I have a 90 coming off of here. So in that case, I basically block off the intake manifold port because I'm not using it anymore. And then instead of running from the PCV valve to the can, from the can to the intake manifold, you basically get rid of that check valve that I showed you a minute ago with the 90 and just run the hose straight from the can to the extra port. And it takes the intake manifold out of the equation, and it gives you 2 ventilation ports on the engine, on the crankcase side, which I've been told it'll help greatly. I haven't had experience using it yet, but that's kind of a real simple setup, and these plates are 150 bucks. They're not that expensive, and it comes with a couple of fittings. I had to get a 90 to come off of the plate. It's really hard to see because it's buried down there, but anyways, so a lot of guys will say, you know, run the stage 1 setup with a check valve and then get your, you know, your breather here and a filter there. Well, when you get to certain points, you know, guys running 25, 30, 35, 40 pounds of boost, that little stage 1 can is not going to cut it anymore. You need more ventilation from your crankcase, and the plate is the way to do it. So, so just to reiterate, it's almost identical to the stage 1. You're just taking the 90 with the check valve. Instead of going to the intake manifold, you get rid of the check valve completely and add it to the port on the engine, and then make sure your can is vented. I think mine had always been vented, but most of the stage 1 kits are a sealed can. So on the top of it, where did I have it? So here's another one, because I had 2. Most of them on the top of the can, you'll have this port plugged. So this is a little check valve that you'll have to add to your can. There's a little plug that's in there. You just pop the plug off. Damond sells a kit. Comes with a little filter. So it makes the can vented so the can can breathe. Because if you put a sealed can down there and you run 2 crankcase hoses to that, there's no way for the can to let pressure out because everything's sealed. You just made a sealed system. So make sure it's vented. That's what's going to release the pressure. And it also helps catch any oil or blow by that would originally have gone to your intake manifold, but it'll catch it in the can and you know, make things a lot easier on the engine. So anyways, my setup is literally just, I might even get rid of that. I might not need it anymore. But for now, I'm leaving that little filter on there. I think you can still run the hose to the intake manifold. I just got rid of it and plugged it off. Just one less thing to deal with. I never had any oil in my intake tube. Never had any problems on the head side of it. Yes, there is technically on the side cover, I mean, you can go all the way down to the crankcase area, but some people don't realize, they think that just by adding this and this, you're going to help with your crankcase pressure issues, and you're not, because the engine actually has, I call it 2 different pressure zones, I guess you would call it. There's a pressure up in the cylinder head, which is helped with this, and then there is actually pressure inside the crankcase where your crank is. They both need to have, I call it ample venting, because the bottom is very, very important. There's a crank spinning, 7,000 RPM or whatever down there, and you're running 26 pounds of boost through the engine. I mean, there's a lot of pressure inside there that needs to go out. Just adding this up here isn't going to help with pressure down here. So it might a little bit, but not when you're talking 25 to 40 pounds, you know, or more, depending on what you're doing. You know, what the race guys run, I honestly don't know, but from what I've been told and what to run, this is a simple setup. It's just 2 ports on the engine. Keep your PCV valve there. Go to the catch can. PCV valve, I believe, goes to the top port. The bottom port on the can goes to the new port on the plate. And then that way you have 2 big lines venting the engine side of it. And that way you're not blowing dipsticks out and blowing out engine seals and, you know, whatever else might happen when you run, you know, excessive amounts of boost. So if you have any questions, let me know, but just thought I'd make that little video showing you guys you know, a better way to run your PCV system. So